The smell of cinnamon and roasted turkey should have felt like home, but instead it felt like walking into a battlefield disguised as a holiday celebration. I stood in the doorway of my mother-in-law's dining room, watching my husband's family gather around the mahogany table that had hosted 30 years of Christmas dinners, and I knew this year would be different. This year, they had something to prove. My hands trembled as I adjusted my 5-year-old son's little red sweater, the one I'd bought specifically for this dinner because I wanted him to look perfect. I wanted them to see what I saw when I looked at my husband, not the men they'd written off, not the disappointment they whispered about in hushed phone calls, but the father who read bedtime stories with different voices for every character. The husband who still brought me coffee in bed every Sunday morning. The laughter from the dining room was too loud, too sharp, like broken glass wrapped in ribbon. I recognized that sound. It was the laughter of people who felt superior, people who had found someone to look down on and were enjoying the view from their pedestal. "Mommy, why does everyone sound so happy but look so mean?" my little boy whispered, his innocent blue eyes looking up at me with the kind of clarity that only children possess. I didn't have an answer for him yet, but I had a feeling that before this Christmas dinner was over, he would teach all of us something about the difference between happiness and cruelty. It started 6 months ago when David lost his job at the accounting firm. Not because he wasn't good at what he did, he was brilliant with numbers, could see patterns in spreadsheets that others missed entirely. But the company was downsizing, and last hired meant first fired, regardless of talent or dedication. I watched my husband transform from a confident provider into a man who questioned his worth with every rejection letter, every unanswered interview, every sideways glance from his family who had always measured success by the size of your paycheck and the prestige of your business card. His brother Michael made partner at his law firm the same month David lost his job. His sister Sarah got promoted to senior marketing director. And David started driving for a rideshare company at night and stocking shelves at a grocery store during the day, swallowing his pride with every "how can I help you?" and every uniform shirt he put on. "It's honest work," he would tell me when he came home exhausted, his hands smelling like cleaning supplies and his spirit a little more broken than the day before. "It's providing for my family," but his family didn't see it that way. The phone calls became less frequent. The invitations to family gatherings came with subtle suggestions that maybe this year we should take some time to get back on our feet before joining them. As if poverty was contagious. As if struggle was something shameful that might rub off on their success. Little Tommy didn't understand why Grandma's voice sounded different when she talked to Daddy on the phone, or why Uncle Michael stopped asking about his soccer games. All he knew was that Daddy seemed sadder lately, and that the grown-ups whispered a lot when they thought he wasn't listening. "Daddy works really hard," Tommy told me one evening as I tucked him into bed. "Why doesn't everyone see how hard he works?" From the mouths of babes, my 5-year-old could see what grown adults chose to ignore. The Christmas invitation came 3 weeks late, almost as an afterthought. Usually, my mother-in-law Margaret sent out elegant printed cards in early November. This year, I got a text message on December 3rd. "Christmas dinner at p.m. Bring a side dish." No warm greeting. No, "we can't wait to see you," just a bare minimum of inclusion. Like we were distant relatives they felt obligated to invite rather than immediate family they actually wanted to see. "Maybe we shouldn't go," David said when I showed him the message. He was sitting at our kitchen table, still in his grocery store uniform, looking at a stack of bills that seemed to grow taller every day. "I don't think I can handle another evening of Michael talking about his new BMW or Sarah showing off pictures from her vacation in Europe. Tommy's been looking forward to Christmas with his cousins for months," I reminded him. "And your mother would never forgive us if we didn't show up." What I didn't tell him was that Margaret had called me the week before with a suggestion that maybe David should dress nicely for Christmas dinner, as if we were teenagers who didn't know how to present ourselves properly. She'd also mentioned, with the kind of casual cruelty that wealthy people perfect, that it might be awkward if David talked too much about his current situation in front of the children. His current situation. As if being temporarily unemployed was a character flaw rather than an economic reality that could happen to anyone. The night before Christmas dinner, I found David in Tommy's room, watching our son sleep. What if they're right? He whispered. What if I really am a failure? What if I'm not the man you married, not the father Tommy deserves? I took his hand, feeling the calluses that had formed from his new jobs, the rough skin that told the story of a man who refused to give up. You're exactly the man we need, I told him. And tomorrow, they're going to remember why. Christmas morning in our small apartment was magical in the way that only comes from love, not money. Tommy's eyes lit up when he saw the bicycle we'd saved for months to buy, a second-hand treasure that David had spent weeks refurbishing in the garage. The paint was fresh, the wheels were true, and the bell rang with the clear, sweet sound of a father's devotion. It's the most beautiful bike in the whole world, Tommy declared, throwing his arms around David's neck with the kind of pure joy that money can't manufacture. But as we got ready for dinner at Margaret's house, I could see the anxiety building in David's shoulders, the way he checked his reflection in the mirror 3 times, adjusting his tie-like armor that might not be strong enough for the battle ahead. They're going to ask about work, he said, his voice tight with dread. They're going to want to know about my prospects and my 5-year plan and whether I've networked with the right people. I wanted to tell him that his family would surprise us, that Christmas spirit would soften their judgment, that love would triumph over their shallow obsession with status. But I'd been married into this family for 7 years, and I knew better. Let them ask, I said, straightening his collar with hands that were steadier than I felt. You have nothing to be ashamed of. Tommy appeared in the doorway, wearing his little red sweater and clutching the toy truck that David had given him, not an expensive electronic gadget, but a simple wooden truck that David had carved himself during his lunch breaks at the store. Daddy, are you sad about Christmas? Tommy asked, his small face creased with concern. David knelt down to Tommy's level, and I watched my husband make a decision. No, buddy, I'm not sad. I'm grateful. I have the best family in the world. He meant it. And somehow, that gave me the strength to face whatever was waiting for us. Margaret's house looked like something from a Christmas magazine, perfectly coordinated decorations, a tree that touched a 12-foot ceiling, and enough twinkling lights to power a small city. Everything was beautiful, expensive, and cold as the December wind outside. The moment we walked in, I felt the shift in energy. Michael and his wife Jennifer were already there, their designer clothes and confident smiles making our Target outfits feel like costumes we were wearing to a party where we didn't belong. Sarah arrived minutes after us with her husband and their twin daughters, all of them glowing with the kind of prosperity that comes from never having to check your bank balance before buying groceries. David, Michael called out, his voice carrying that particular tone of forced enthusiasm that people use when they're about to deliver bad news disguised as concern. How's the job hunt going? Any promising leads? The question hung in the air like smoke, and I watched David's jaw tighten almost imperceptibly. I'm working, he said simply, keeping busy. Oh, right. Sarah chimed in, her smile sharp as a knife. Jennifer mentioned you're doing some kind of driving thing? And retail? The way she said retail made it sound like a disease. Tommy was playing with his cousins in the corner, but I could see him glancing over at the adults, his young mind trying to process the strange tension in the room. It's honest work, David replied, echoing the words he'd been telling himself for months. Of course it is, Margaret said, her voice dripping with the kind of condescension that wealthy mothers-in-law perfect over decades. We're just concerned about Tommy's future, you know. Children need stability, security. They need to see their fathers as successful. The word successful landed like a slap. I felt my cheeks burn with anger, but David just nodded, as if he agreed with their assessment of his worth. Dinner was served with a side of subtle humiliation. They talked about their vacations, their promotions, their children's private schools, and expensive extracurricular activities. Every story was a reminder of what we couldn't afford. Every laugh was at our expense. And through it all, Tommy sat quietly, his innocent eyes moving from face to face, watching the adults he loved treat his father like he was less than human. The breaking point came during dessert. Margaret had made her famous Christmas trifle, and everyone was praising her culinary skills when Michael decided to share what he clearly thought was a hilarious story. So I'm at the country club last week, he began, his voice already bubbling with laughter. And I see this guy who looks exactly like David stocking shelves at the grocery store. I mean, exactly like him, same height, same build, same defeated posture. Sarah giggled. Oh no, you didn't. I did. I actually went over to check, and sure enough, it was our David, wearing one of those little name tags and everything. I almost didn't recognize him without a tie. The laughter that erupted around the table was cruel and sharp, the kind of laughter that cuts deep and leaves scars. Jennifer covered her mouth, trying to look apologetic while her eyes sparkled with amusement. Margaret shook her head with mock sympathy, as if David's situation was both tragic and somehow amusing. I felt so bad for him, Michael continued, wiping tears of laughter from his eyes. There he was, asking if I needed help finding anything. I wanted to say, yeah, I need help finding my brother's dignity. More laughter, louder this time. David's face had gone pale, and his hands were clenched so tightly around his napkin that his knuckles were white. I reached for his hand under the table, but he pulled away, lost in his own humiliation. The best part, Sarah added, clearly enjoying the story, is that he was wearing a hairnet. A hairnet! Remember when he used to lecture us about professional appearance? The laughter reached a crescendo, echoing off the crystal chandelier and the expensive wallpaper, filling the room with the sound of people who had forgotten what it meant to be kind. And then, cutting through the noise like a bell in a storm, came the voice of my 5-year-old son. Why are you treating Dad like this? The laughter stopped so abruptly it was like someone had turned off a radio. Every face turned toward Tommy, who was standing beside his chair, his little hands balled into fists, his blue eyes blazing with an anger I'd never seen in someone so young. Tommy, sweetheart, Margaret began, but Tommy wasn't finished. Dad works really, really hard, he said, his voice growing stronger with each word. He gets up early and comes home late, and he's always tired, but he still reads me stories and helps me with my bike and makes me pancakes on Saturday mornings. The room was silent now, the kind of silence that feels heavy and uncomfortable. David was staring at his son with wonder, as if seeing him for the first time. He's the best dad in the whole world, Tommy continued, tears starting to roll down his cheeks. And you're being mean to him. You're being really, really mean. And it's not fair. He turned to look at each adult in turn, his innocent gaze holding them accountable in a way that no amount of adult reasoning could have accomplished. Dad says Christmas is about love, but you're not showing love. You're being bullies. The silence that followed Tommy's words was deafening. I watched as the faces around the table transformed. Michael's smug smile faded into something that looked like shame. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She tried to blink away, and Margaret's perfectly composed expression cracked like expensive porcelain. David stood up slowly, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but steady, filled with a dignity that no amount of unemployment could take away. Tommy's right, he said, looking at each of his family members in turn. I've been letting you treat me like I'm less than I am because I was ashamed of my circumstances, but I'm not ashamed anymore. He picked up Tommy, holding our son against his chest like the precious gift he was. This little boy sees me clearly. He sees a father who loves him, a man who works hard to provide for his family, someone who never gave up even when things got difficult. Margaret opened her mouth to speak, but David held up his hand. I don't need your approval anymore, he said. I don't need your definition of success. I have something more valuable than any promotion or paycheck. I have a son who believes in me and a wife who stands by me. We left that Christmas dinner with our heads held high, Tommy's small hand in David's, my arm linked through my husband's. Behind us, I could hear Margaret calling our names, her voice thick with regret. But we didn't turn around. In the car, Tommy looked up at his father with pure adoration. Dad, you're my hero, he said simply. David's eyes met mine in the rearview mirror, and I saw something there that had been missing for months. Pride. Not the kind of pride that comes from impressing others, but the kind that comes from knowing your worth regardless of what others think. Sometimes it takes the innocent wisdom of a child to remind us that love doesn't come with conditions, and that true success is measured not by what you have, but by who you are when everything else is stripped away. If this story reminded you that worth isn't measured by wealth, that love sees beyond circumstances, subscribe and share this with someone who needs to remember their true value today. There are truths that only children dare to speak, and this is one of them.